Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Joe Tyrrell and welcome back to the Runoff, the GP Blog podcast. The British Grand Prix threw up one of the races of the last decade. A four-way tussle for victory ultimately ended with a first ever F1 victory for Carlos Sainz. As always, myself, Cam and Toby will dissect the race at Silverstone, and there's plenty to cover, that's for sure. We'll also look ahead to Austria and the second sprint race of the season. This is the 2022 season, episode 10.
Michael and John.
No, Mike, that was so not right.
Get in there, Lewis.
George Russell, qualified Mr. Hamilton.
You are the world champion.
Well, welcome back everyone to the Runoff. We're 10 episodes into the 2022 season. Toby and Cam have joined me as ever. How are you, lads?
I'm good, thank you, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Toby. And Cam, how about yourself?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Yeah, like you said, an absolute thriller of a Grand Prix, and I'm glad it was as dramatic as it was because we were due one, I think, and yeah, really happy with how it went.
Yeah, me and Toby mentioned it a couple of weeks ago that the race and the season was just sort of petering on a little bit. It had hit a bit of a flat spot. So we certainly got the race we deserved, what we wanted at Silverstone. And it was nice that it was our home race that provided that entertainment. It ended up Carlos Sainz on top of the podium for the first time in Formula One history. It's been a long time coming, hasn't it, Cam?
Yeah, for sure. I think when he moved to Ferrari, it was the move to the top team. And then this season, when they've shown that they're capable of fighting for victories, we were hoping it would come. And it's come 10 races into the season. Like you say, yeah, season had was at risk of sort of just flattening out with Red Bull's dominance and Max Verstappen's in particular. Canada showed that Sainz had some pace, and yeah, pole win. Yeah, he maybe got a little bit fortunate with Ferrari's strategy in terms of Charles Leclerc and being sort of hung out to dry on those hard tyres, but in the end he did what he had to do and deserved the win. So yeah, really happy for Carlos.
Toby, it was a really, really entertaining race, and I feel like we got the ending we deserved with Sainz on top of the podium.
Yeah, I think we got what like you said, we got what we deserved. It's been a long time coming. I think one thing I've kind of looked at it as is probably the most hectic race of the season because there was so much going on, and it was almost like I think there was only maybe a dry spell for like 5 laps in the middle of the race, and that was it. And then at the end, after the safety car, we had 5 cars fighting for P2. And I think that was just mega. I think off that safety car start, Charles Leclerc got a pretty decent start, I think, and then Sainz followed closely. But after that overtake, it just kind of seemed like the road just lit up for him, and he just sped on and deservedly won his first Grand Prix.
We're talking about the last 10 or 15 laps there, but the race was sort of brought to a halt before it even got underway, really, and so much so that when the red flag was called, they went back to the original starting grid. It was a huge crash at the start, but it was really good to see the technology the Halo put in place. Well, once again, proving any doubters wrong.
Yeah, for sure. It's been the best thing that's happened to F1 in a long time, technologically wise. Yet again, like it's done countless times. I mean, we saw it in Formula 2 with Dennis Hauger and Ron Asani just sort of before what happened with Zhou Guanyu. And yeah, it's proving to be an absolutely genius piece of sort of technology that's just helping the safety of the sport massively. Obviously, we're all thankful that Zhou is okay, and same with Alex Albon. Both huge crashes. Pretty scary to seeing it in the background, Zhou's car just flying upside down. But yeah, grateful that the marshals and everything were all on hand and everything was okay with the car and the driver, more importantly. So yeah, thankful for that. But yeah, huge crash. It certainly started in dramatic fashion, a bit like it did last year.
Yeah, great to see that Zhou is okay. But once we got racing, it never, as Toby said, it was only the sort of that 5-lap period in the middle where there was any sort of lull. So it was really good that the racing wasn't hampered by that. The weather stayed away and we got a really good race in the end.
I think one thing from watching the TV, like cameras, and all you could see, like Cam said, was Zhou upside down in the background. But it wasn't until we actually saw the replays that we saw the Albon crash as well, because he went head first into the pit wall. And I think that just kind of caught people off guard in a way, because when I was watching it, I sat at the end of my bed, didn't say a word for about 5 minutes, because all I was thinking about was, is Guan Yu Zhou all right? Because that's all we saw. But then it wasn't until we saw the replays that we saw Albon and then all of the other small incidents as well. So I think, like Cam said, the halo is just one thing of technology that I don't think we'll ever see go away.
Certainly, they didn't show us the TV replays for a while for obvious reasons. But once they knew Zhao was all right, we saw it, and we saw what a huge crash it was, and quite a spectacular crash the way it unravelled, really. But glad to hear everyone's all right, and we got a good race out of it. As for Carlos Sainz, he'll be reveling in the fact he's got his first Formula One victory under his belt. But one man who might be ruining possibly a missed opportunity, Lewis Hamilton this weekend, seemed to have a bit more pace this weekend, Mercedes.
Yeah, the Mercedes George will have been disappointed because obviously he was involved in that crash right at the start, but he was only really involved because of where he qualified. So he'll be disappointed because I think if he had had a better qualifying, he would have been past that, and he could have had a really strong race as well. So he'll be disappointed at that. But yeah, Mercedes definitely had the pace. That slow stop for Lewis is about 2 seconds too slow, and if that hadn't happened, he would have been right in there with Sainz and Leclerc when he came out for that pit stop. But instead, he was a little way back, and that sort of hampered his chances of ever actually fighting for the win in the closing stages. But encouraging signs. I think we'd heard all the chatter that Silverstone was when their upgrades were going to come in. I think we were all still a little bit tentative whether that was true or not, just because of what we've seen so far this season. But yeah, they certainly had the pace to be fighting for podiums consistently now. So I think they maybe don't have the pace just yet to fight for a win if all circumstances are sort of normal. There's no safety cars, red flags, that kind of thing. But yeah, they're certainly up there for finishing on the podium like Lewis has now done 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, one thing to note about Mercedes is that yesterday Lewis Hamilton finished with the fastest lap bonus point after finishing P3. And I think in Canada as well, he had one of the most consistent high speeds around the track. So there's clearly, I think now we can say, although, as you said, be tentative with it, there is progress at Mercedes, and hopefully they're bringing it in to make it a more of a freeway battle between all three teams rather than two, Ferrari and Red Bull. So that will be really good. We'll touch on them more in the winners and losers section, I'm sure, but a big weekend for Haas, double points and first points for young Mick.
Yeah, it was quite nice to see. I think we've kind of been a bit unsure on whether or not Mick Schumacher actually deserves his seat. I know we haven't really voiced it on here, but in private conversations, there's been a few times where we've been like, Mick doesn't look as strong as we first thought. But I don't think you can take away his performance on the weekend, where he potentially should have got ahead of Max Verstappen if it wasn't for some dodgy driving from the world champion. But yeah, I think Kevin Magnussen had a very quiet race, but secured 1 point. So they'll be happy with that. And I think it's the first time in a long time that Haas can say a double points finish.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long time coming. So well done, Mick. Well done, Magnussen. And well done, Haas. Just before we get on to the winners and losers, lads, I want to quickly make a point. We saw that brilliant four-way tussle for the victory at the end, and it also saw Alonso and Norris come back into it. That was brilliant, and a lot of people will say it's because of the new regulations. What's your opinions on that? Do you think it's because of the new regulations we found ourselves in that situation, or do you simply think it was the way the race unfolded? We were just simply given that scenario. If it was happening last season, we would have had the same outcome.
I think the regulations may have helped in terms of how easy it was to follow cars, but I think it was more circumstantial. I think that Max sort of not being present there would have helped, just because he's such a good driver and he's got so much pace. He would have been further ahead. Leclerc with obviously worn out hard tyres, plus he had a little bit of damage. Same with Perez. I'm not really sure. He sort of went a little bit under the radar and then suddenly popped up in P2 near the end. But yeah, I think a little bit. And then how the safety car came and they were all sort of just within DRS. And when you've got the DRS, it's obviously easier to follow. And I think that helped. But yeah, it was mega. I think at one stage at turn 7, I think it was, there were all 5 of them within 1.2 seconds or something like that. So yeah, it was really great to see, and also great to see that it was 5 different constructors. I think that's maybe the thing I'll take away most of it. It wasn't just sort of 3 different teams or whatever, with each with 2 drivers or whatever. It was 5 different constructors, which is an encouraging sign, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point you make there, Cam. 5 different constructors, and I think that's sort of where we're at. Is although the top three are probably clear. You've got now it's sort of unfolding that Alpine and McLaren will be those next two teams. Alonso's always going to be quick, and Norris is super quick as well. So yeah, we were given that opportunity to have that period of racing, and it was really good. But lads, we'll get on to our winners and losers now of the British Grand Prix. Well, Toby, I'm going to start with you. We've already mentioned your winners this episode, so please do elaborate. Haas.
Yeah, I kind of briefly pointed at it, but it's just a very strong weekend for them where they can't really be disappointed. Obviously, they could say, "Oh, we wish we would have scored more points," but coming into the race, they probably didn't even think about getting anywhere near a double points finish. So I don't really know what else to say apart from the fact that they'll be happy. Obviously, we've already kind of pointed at the fact that Mick Schumacher had a strong race. And then I think the thing that the fans love the most is that they finally get to see a boat upgrade on the social media. So yeah, I think overall just a very strong weekend for Haas that they'll take away quite happily.
I think it's most sort of impressive considering they started 17th and 19th. Obviously
the crash would have helped.
Yeah, obviously helped by the fact only 14 finished, but still Schumacher qualified 19th and finished 8th in the end. So I think they'll be encouraged because it's sort of been the reverse of that this season. They've had pace in qualifying and then not really had the race pace to make it count quite a lot of the time. But it was complete opposite of Silverstone, which is ultimately where it counts in the race. So they'll be happy they've managed to maybe extract a little bit more, even if it was they were sort of helped massively by the circumstances.
Yeah, a big moment for Haas, and really good to see Mick finally score some points. He's had some close moments, but he finally got it under his belt. Cam, I'll come to you now. There can only really be one other winner this weekend, and that man is Carlos Sainz.
Yep, I think he's been leading races before, finished P2, finished on the podium. Just that one step too far is proven sort of so far in his career has proven sort of one step too far. I mean, we've seen it with drivers in the past, Alex Albon when he was at Red Bull, that kind of thing. And so it was slowly getting into the stage where you're thinking, come on, it needs to happen now. Sort of maybe a little bit like Sergio Perez last year before he got the win at Baku, when you're thinking you're in a title winning car now, you need to get at least a win or, a pole position here or there. And Sainz did both this weekend, smashed out the park, obviously was helped by sort of Verstappen's damage and Leclerc being left out to dry on the used hard tyres, whereas Carlos had the softs. But still, you can't, you have to drive with the circumstances you're given, and he did that excellently. So, yeah, I think it's about time, and I think he can hopefully build some confidence from Canada, from here, go on to Austria, and try and fight for the win again because he's got the pace to. He just needs to have the belief.
Yeah, I sort of feel like this is the moment we've all been waiting for. When we were 2 or 3 races into the season, we sort of thought Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, who were very much on a level playing field, but it soon quickly became clear Charles Leclerc was number 1 and Carlos Sainz was struggling a little bit. However, he's come back in the last 2 weeks. Charles Leclerc has had some poor results. Carlos Sainz hasn't. P2 last week, or a couple of weeks ago in Canada, and P1 today. So, Toby, real progress for him.
Yeah, I think it's finally getting to the point where we're seeing how strong of a driver he really is. Like he all we can say so far this season is that he has been unlucky and that his time has been coming. So it's quite nice to see. It's quite warming. But apart from that, I don't really know what else to say.
So sentimental.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. Congratulations, Carlos Sainz. You are one of this week's winners. On to the losers now. And Cam, I'll come back to you. The man who has been so dominant this season, and particularly of late, is your loser this week, Max Verstappen.
Yeah, didn't go to plan. Obviously, at the first race start, he managed to jump Carlos Sainz, but the FIA decided to restart the race with their original grid spots because they hadn't completed the lap that was, or whatever the position to determine it, which is fair enough. And he looked like he'd almost got Sainz again, but wasn't to be. And then picked up damage, had to pit, and then it was just pretty slow from there on out. Had the puncture, and then sort of just was a little. But I have to say, considering the circumstances, finishing 7th and picking up some points is damage limitation, which is all he can do. But for his high expectations, for what we expected coming into the weekend, finishing 7th really isn't what he needs. Obviously, still has a massive lead in the championship, but open the door slightly to everyone else, especially when Sergio Perez finishes 2nd, even though he had troubles himself. So yeah, Verstappen really didn't go to plan. I mean, he would have been hoping to be on pole. That didn't come to fruition, and then the race sort of just unraveled a little bit. It was kind of just a bit in no man's land. I mean, that last lap against Schumacher, I'll delve into it because I wasn't best pleased with the defending from Max. I think there was two instances on that last lap. One where Schumacher's been forced completely sort of off the track by Max before they go down the old pit straight, and then just that final turn. I think Schumacher's got an absolutely great exit from the chicane, and he's looking like he might even pit Max on the line for 7th. And Max just squeezes him out completely, and Schumacher has to bail out. If he didn't bail out, it would have been a crash there right in the final turn. Obviously, I understand defending sort of hard racing. Nothing the FIA would do about it because it's just hard defending, but I'd love to see if Max was racing against Max, see what would happen, because I think there'd be quite a few crashes if he's based on how we know he sort of attacks drivers as well.
Yeah, certainly was very. I remember watching the closing stages and they sort of briefly cut to Max, and it was very, very hard defending. But as a change from our usual proceedings, Max Verstappen is a loser this week. So unlucky Max. Toby, another sort of Red Bull related loser this week, AlphaTauri.
Yeah, I'll keep it short and simple. There wasn't much positive for them when it came from the race. Pierre Gasly had to retire, and Yuki Tsunoda finished last out of the running cars. I think probably the highlight for them will be their kind of symmetrical spin, which kind of made a few fans happy and made them smile. But apart from that, there wasn't really much else positive for them this weekend.
Yeah, that was awful when that happened. I was like, come on. But
I heard Yuki complaining down the radio as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that was about, but I think Yuki sort of made the mistake. He got a 5-second time penalty, I think, for that. And yeah, but I also like to add that Daniel Ricciardo has had another poor weekend. He finished 13th, Lando was in 6th, and was so much quicker than him. And it's kind of gone to the point of no repair, I think now. I would be very surprised if he's in a seat at McLaren next year.
Well, that's a big call. We'll have to wait and see whether Daniel Ricciardo is in a seat in McLaren next year. But AlphaTauri and kind of Daniel Ricciardo, you are losers this week. But enough on the British Grand Prix now. We'll get on to this week's Austrian Grand Prix and our first sprint race of the season. Well, lads, our first sprint race of the season is coming up this weekend in Austria. Can't remember. I don't think it hosted one last season. It was Silverstone, Brazil, and Monza. So no, it didn't. So our first sprint race of the season. Austria is normally a pretty good race. I'm pretty pleased we're going to Austria next after Silverstone.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's also a good location. Well, I'm hoping that this is going to come true, but I think it's a good location for a sprint race. I mean, it's a really short track, so it feels kind of sprinty and that kind of thing. It's not like a Silverstone, which is just really long. It's a short loop, so I feel like that would be great. But yeah, I think it's one of the easier tracks to overtake as well. So I think that hopefully we can see some action on the Saturday as well as the Sunday.
Imola was the first sprint race.
Was it?
Yeah.
No, Silverstone was.
No, this season.
Have we had a sprint race this year already?
Imola was the first one.
Have we?
Yeah, I thought we had. Yeah.
Apparently, we have had a sprint race already. What were the results from that sprint race, Toby?
Verstappen won, Leclerc second, Perez third, Sainz fourth. Mercedes had a stinker because I think it was in the wet.
I remember Imola was wet.
In the wet.
I didn't realise it was a sprint race. Well, that's completely thrown me off. I mean, yeah. So we go into Austria for our second sprint race apparently. But as Cam said, short track. Hopefully, it's nice and racy. I'm certainly looking forward to it. What happened last time we were in Austria? Max had a good double, didn't he? Yeah, Max did the double.
Max absolutely was so much quicker than everyone else.
Mercedes struggled, didn't they?
Didn't Lando get on the podium?
Yeah,
He did
overtook
one of them.
Hamilton.
I feel like was this the one where Hamilton was told not to go on the curbs because he was picking up damage or something? I feel like that happened.
Something like that. I think Bottas was second and Norris third. I've got in my head.
Yeah, I feel like that was the race where Hamilton was told he had damage. He couldn't go on the curbs.
So Mercedes might be looking for a bit of redemption this weekend, but they're probably just going to be too slow compared to the Red Bulls.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll wait to see. I hope it's a three-way fight, three-constructor-way fight now, but it might just have been a one-off. But we'll see.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
We'll have to wait and see. But lads, let's get into our predictions now. So Cameron, do you want to go through the standings after our last lot of predictions?
Yeah, so obviously we missed 1 week, but we did do predictions for Silverstone. And I can reveal that I was the only person to score points. I correctly predicted that Carlos Sainz would get pole position and win the race. So I get 2 points for that. If you're new to these predictions, you get 1 point for predicting pole position right, 1 for predicting the right winner, and 3 points if you predict a correct surprise. So I got 2 points for Sainz winning pole. I predicted that 3 Brits would be in the top 5. Obviously that didn't happen, and that was done by turn 1. So not a great prediction there. As for Toby, no points scored. You predicted Perez pole, Max win, and Russell P2. And Joe, no points for you. You predicted Max win, Max pole, and Hamilton P2. But you did predict that Hamilton would get first and then change your mind.
If you remember back to the last episode, I said Hamilton P3, Hamilton podium. And then I changed my mind. I thought, no, I'll be a bit braver. I'll go Hamilton P2. And then when I saw him overtake Perez and Leclerc, I thought, hang on a second, I'm in the points here. And then all of a sudden, it just drifted away from me. But we're going to make this week's predictions. So, Toby, I'll come to you first. Pole, winner, and surprise package.
I think...
Oh, hang on. How are we doing the sprint race?
Oh.
Is it pole position from quali, pole position from the sprint race? I'm saying... pole from quali on Friday.
Pole from quali, okay.
Oh, I don't know. What is the pole?
I say pole is whoever starts Sunday's race.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So
winner of the
pole,
race.
yeah. So winner of the sprint, winner of the race. Surprise.
Yep, that's fine with me.
Winner of the sprint, I'm going to go Max. Winner of the race, I'll also go Max. And then surprise, I think Fernando Alonso top 5.
I was going to say a Fernando prediction. Okay.
Fernando top 5. Cameron?
I will say that Charles Leclerc will win the sprint race. I will say that Max Verstappen will win the actual race. And my surprise package will be that... what do I think? I think Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso will both be in the top 7.
Wow. So double Alpine top 7.
Double Alpine top 7. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, that's acceptable, I think, because that's 2 out of 7. I am going with a Max Verstappen sprint race W, a Max Verstappen actual race W. I'm going for George Russell P2.
You love a Mercedes.
Is that a surprise? Is that a surprise?
Yeah. Yes, that's a surprise.
Yeah, George Russell P2. I just think Mercedes. I've been tempted to go for a Mercedes W for a while, to be fair, because.
Would you be tempted? You predict it every week.
the first 3 races, I think you were.
Because it has to happen sometime, right? Surely Mercedes can't go a whole year.
I think they'll both get a win this year, Hamilton and Russell. I feel like they must do.
Well, it might happen this season, but it's not happening at Imola because George Russell is finishing second, and that's this week.
Austria.
At Austria, George Russell is finishing second in Austria. Bloody hell! It's been a long 24 hours, lads. But those are your predictions, lads, for the Austrian Grand Prix. Thank you for joining me this week, lads. I hope you enjoyed the British Grand Prix.
Yeah, it was an absolute cracker. I wish we could do it again.
Yeah, we'll have that every week.
Yeah, if racing's like that every week for the rest of the season, we will not mind at all. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you after the Austrian Grand Prix. But until then, I'll catch you next time.
Michael and John.
No, Michael, that was so not right.
Get in there, Lewis.
George Russell qualified Mr. Hamilton.
You are